At this Veterans Day celebration, especially at this time in history, we thankfully remember those who have fought, who are fighting, and who will continue to fight to preserve our liberty and the right of all people who live in freedom. And as we pause to give thanks, we fly our flags a little more proudly and keep the spirit of American patriotism alive. As busy with everyday living, we seldom take time to think about, reflect on the past. We've asked two of our government officials to offer reflections on this tribute to veterans. First, our Mayor, David Bauer, will stir our thoughts for observing this important week.
I've gotten a little bold today because I wasn't able to print out my speech ahead of this, so hopefully the technology and all works as it's supposed to. Can everybody hear me okay? Good afternoon. A big thank you to Alice Stoll. I know it's all right, let's stand up. Alice is somebody that we all are truly grateful for all of her efforts in putting this together. This gathering today is all about you, and I'm honored to be a part of this with you. So I thank all the different organizations that have helped put this together. 91 years ago, actually 94 years ago, I think it was, 93 years ago, 1921, an American soldier, known but to God, was buried on the hillside in Arlington Cemetery in Virginia. In 1954, President Eisenhower signed a bill proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day. It is sometimes confused with Memorial Day, which is to honor those who died in service to our country. In 1918, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns fell silent and peace began to return to Europe. Many of you remember that. As a child, I was sitting on my father's knee listening about that day, learning about that day, looking at the medals that he had, that he collected in a box that I still have in my home, and looking forward to sharing with my grandsons. It was a special part of my life as I thought about what my dad had been through. Certainly at that time I wasn't thinking about all of the freedoms that I had when I was a 6-year-old. It didn't mean anything to me. I didn't understand it at that time. But today I do. Today I recognize and remember all of the things that what he stood for and what he taught me as someone who had fought in the war. The importance of courage in what we do. The importance of bravery for standing up and doing the right thing for the right reasons. And sometimes that's not the most popular thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. Those are the lessons that you have taught us, the generation that came after. And we hope that you will also then continue to help teach those lessons to those in the next generation. I know many of you in the audience personally. You are all very important to me. You have been guideposts for me for a number of years as mayor. That relationship and what you have taught me about courage and bravery and standing up for the right things for the right reasons is what I pay tribute to you today for having that courage, for sharing your lives, your family's lives when you step forward and you serve this country in war. I have friends who were in Vietnam, and I know that was a whole different situation. And I know that when they came back from Vietnam, they were treated a lot differently. I think about when I am traveling, when I'm at the airport, and I see people in our own city here, and the youngsters who are in uniform. And I say youngsters, these are young men and women in their early 20s, and we know them. That's the generation now that's out doing the same thing you did years ago. I pray that each and every one of you in this room, in those in our community and across the region will never hesitate to give thanks to those men and women when they see them. When I see them, they're normally by themselves. They're in uniform. They're returning home, hopefully for a short stint, hopefully for a long time. I'm hesitant to reach out to them because I know they're going through things when they're returning to the States. But it's also admittedly difficult for me not to thank them. So I still thank them, and I hope that they forgive me for that. But it's my little way of giving back, my little way of saying thank you. Thank you, Julio Bambini, for doing what you did, for stepping up years ago. If you had not done so, Lord knows where we'd be today. If those families who have lost loved ones who served in the war had not been able to stand and recognize the importance that their loved ones gave, giving themselves to what we are proud to have today, that of freedom. Thank you for your loss. Thank you for what you have done to make us a better country. Alice, I'm so far off my notes, I don't want to go down to this. I'm not even going to do it. But it's very simple. It's a very simple thing we need to do today. And we need to do it every day of our lives. Think about those around us. Think about the influence you have on the people around you, the youngsters, the young families. Think about the lessons that you can teach them. Not just about what you sacrificed and what you learned in the war or your military service, but what you've learned in your daily lives after the service, in your daily life that you experience today in our community and in this region. Think about the influence you have on the people around you. Think about the young men and women, in this community especially, that can learn from your trials, tribulations, that can learn from your experiences. And I hope that every one of you will still have the opportunity to bounce a young one on your lap, as my father did with me, and to share with him. You know, I didn't understand the war movies Dad was watching all the time. I didn't get it. But what I did understand later was the importance of spending that time with my dad and learning what the service meant to him, to his comrades that he fought with, to the stories that he could tell, and every single badge that he wore, and every single badge that he showed me had a purpose. And those stories never changed. You know, year after year, as I would sit and I'd listen and he would share them with my other siblings, they were the same stories. My wife says my stories grow as I tell the stories. His always seem to be the same. But I hope that every one of you will still take the opportunity to counsel with a young one, maybe a 20-year-old, maybe a teen, maybe a grade schooler, on the importance of learning bravery, courage, the importance of freedom that we have today, because it'll never leave them. It'll always be there, and they will remember you, and they'll be thankful to you. They may not say thank you every time, but I guarantee you they'll be thankful. So today I thank you. I thank you for all that you've done, for me personally, for my family, for this community, and being here today. And for the young people in our community that look up to you, I thank you for the impression you've left them. I thank you for the goals and aspirations that you've passed on to them. And I thank you for being here today. May God bless you.
We appreciate all those wonderful remarks. And isn't it great when we have officials who get really on a friendly basis with all of us, and we can connect with what they're talking about each time. So we really appreciate that. Our second government official to address the topic is our Missouri House of Representatives legislator, Tom McDonald, who serves our area. Now, inasmuch as many here have not had the opportunity to meet him, we would just add a note. We would say right at this moment, however, Tom, that every time retired teachers goes down to see you at Jefferson City, he says, "Don't worry about me, I'll always look after your Raytown teachers." And we appreciate that, don't we, teachers? I wanted to give you a quick note. In addition to his legislative duties, he's retired after working as a retail environment and industrial designer for Hallmark Cards, and for many years with an advertising firm. And may I say a little something? You know, you start looking into their backgrounds. This fellow and his wife have adopted 12 children. So he has a touch with the real world, let me tell you. But we're so pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Tom McDonald. I represent Missouri's 28th District, which takes in all of Raytown and a large section of Kansas City. It's true that I did raise 12 children, 5 biological and 7 adopted. So yes, I've raised 12. I'm still working on the last one. And it's not just so it's great to be here today, and I would like to say thank you on behalf of myself, the governor, the great state of Missouri, the 28th District, for all of your service and commitment. I was born in a relatively unique spot in time. I was born in 1946 at the end of the Second World War, and I was a baby boomer. I was born when so many other people, probably in this room, were born in that slot. And it gave me a unique perspective on our country, how it developed, and the meaning of patriotism. So inside that window, the last 68 years, I was able to communicate with people who have committed themselves to preservation of this country from the First World War through today. I've always been of interest the people who have served their country. So at a very young age, of course, and through older relatives, commitment of the First World War was fascinating. But the overlap of age, I don't think I gathered as much information as I would like to. But the involvement of people who were committed to the efforts in the Second World War and my age pretty much meshed. So I understood at that time what it really took. And I would like to relay a couple of stories. First of all, about my good neighbor when I was growing up, Frank. And I'm going to try and make this brief. But, Frank was the ultimate neighbor. His kids and I attended school together. He worked hard. He was a community activist. He never spoke of his war efforts. He just was known to me as the dad of his kids who were at school at that time. And as I grew older, Frank and I continued to bond. I just liked him, and he was real matter of fact. And he had interest. And through all of this, as I grew in age, about post-high school, I was 17, 18 years old, we got closer and closer together. And only through my father did I know that Frank had an extensive war history. And so Frank had entered the Army prior to World War II at 17. And he was, now some of this will fill itself in, but he was sent for basic training in the Philippines. And as all of you know, when the war broke out, of course, the Philippines were attacked by the Japanese. And Frank was taken as a captive. Now, he suffered through the Bataan Death March, and internment in Japan through the entire series of war. But my involvement with him was a lesson in human endurance, faith, hope, patriotism, and all of the things that someone like Frank knew the real meaning of. And he never lost his commitment and his undying faith in this country and his sense of patriotism. He was the best. So later in life, I was working at that time. Frank had always maintained his silence. There's so many other people who fought in that war, so many other veterans did. They just chose to be quiet. Only through my dad again did I know that he was even a veteran. And so I was given the opportunity to hear his story when he, quite late in life, when he decided to break that silence and tell the story of endurance. And I remained in touch and friends with Frank until he died early last summer. And it's the lesson that probably formed a number of things in my life. Number one would be faith. He was faithful to the end and always shared that. Endurance, of course. I mean, after that story was out, and all of you know the details. I mean, it's not something that is a secret. But the man lived that through his entire life and never complained. So that's one of the reasons I'm here today, because of Frank and his commitment to all of us. So later in life, I moved to Kansas City and worked most of my working life here. Coincidentally, I moved in next door to another friend who served many of the same ways, but his commitment was in the European theater. He was in the Battle of the Bulge, similar, very similar, and it just reaffirmed what it took and what it meant to people of that generation. It was unspoken, it was relentless, it was a commitment to this country and its greatness, and they never wavered, never wavered. So those life lessons were handed to me in kind of a roundabout way, but it's something that is ingrained. I'll never forget that. So in this threshold of life that I've experienced, where I've known people from the First War, the Second World War, my generation, the Vietnam War, my friends who left, many of them returned with stories, others did not. Here again, it just strengthens your faith in mankind because you see what it takes in commitment to keep this country free. So I look out, I see a number of you, probably the majority of you close to my age, service in the country, Vietnam, other conflicts beyond that. I would like to say thank you. I will never, even though I'm not a veteran, I will never forget the lessons I've learned. It's how this country was built, how this country survives its patriotic flavor, and it's a thank you to all who serve the country. It's amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you to both of you who have given us much to ponder. And now, to the many heroes who have given their lives in combat while serving this country, inspired by the sense of duty and the faith that we have in this great nation of ours, we give thanks. As protector of life and liberty for all Americans, they deserve respect and recognition for their service they have given, and we remember those many who have made the greatest sacrifice for peace, part of the terrible cost of war that they would not ever know the victory over, and who they have helped achieve. In their memory, we will present the wreath of honor and memory.
All rise!
All stand, please, and remain standing if you will.
Detail! Forward! Who? Detail! Halt! Order! Who? Detail! Mark time! Who? Detail! Halt! Forward! Who? Detail! Halt! Right! Who? Forward! Who? Halt! Halt!
Thank you. You may be seated.
A celebration of this magnitude could not be complete without robust, fantastic music filling the air with these tremendous brass sounds of the community band as it presents the Armed Forces Salute. Now, when you hear those familiar strains of a specific branch in which you are a relative as are serving, or if you're the widow or of a veteran who has served in that particular branch, we encourage you to stand so that we may salute you and your service to our country. Eric? a friend sent to us, and it featured the commemoration of our war servicemen. BJ and I immediately decided that it would become a tradition to be shared with all of us. And in our previous salutes, it has served as a reminder every day, every month, every year. BJ?
Some few years ago, I met a fellow named Sam, and he felt pretty much the same way I did about war. War is not noble. War is not valiant. War is a necessity. Those who are valiant and noble are those who gave their time, their lives, to fight the necessity and to be out there from the call of our people. Out of need, not out of desire. And out of desire, I say that because it seems like those who've stayed home says, let's go get them. But the more and more I figure out quotes from people, Eisenhower was the one man who said, this is terrible, we shouldn't do it. But he did it because he had to. Colin Powell said the same thing among all the chiefs of staff, among all the cabinet members. He said, let's go get those Arabs. He said, no, let's not do it. And those are the bravest people ever. And Sam said, we need to remember those who did give their lives, or give their limbs, or give their personal humanity. Those who just had war mess their minds up, if nothing else. Those people need to be remembered forever, and for all these generations that are coming on who don't know anything about war except what they read in the newspaper, they need to be reminded every day of what they took to get them that freedom to be here. And we know that as a small group of people in Raytown, Missouri, but we're very honorable as anything in Washington or Seattle or Chicago, about recognizing those people who did put themselves forward in order to keep the rest of us alive and happy. And so I take pleasure in showing to you this little video. It was put on by a man named Sam Bierstock. So respect and enjoy. We would have the lights.